I was doing some research on air compressors the other day and I thought, wow, this stuff is really expensive and I would never spend that amount of money on an air compressor like this. So I decided to go out to find out if I could go on Amazon and buy something for $30, $40, $50, $60, and will it work? Will it air up my 39-inch off-road tires from a super low pressure? Do I really need to spend $200, $400, $600 on an air compressor? So that's what we're gonna be doing in this video. I have 6 compressors across Amazon, Morflate, 4-wheel parts, and then Harbor Freight. So I want to find out if you could spend way less money and still have a fairly decent, reliable air compressor. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're going to be testing out these selection of air compressors from these small $30, $50 ones up to $160, $50, $70, and then up to $300 plus air compressors, and see if we can spend less than $100 and get something that is going to work in filling up 39-inch tires. So one thing I need to talk about before we start doing this is the valve stems and valve cores themselves. Now, they are a restricting point for sure. So you could have a compressor that puts out 10 CFM and that is cubic feet per minute, or one that puts out 5.65, or I think these are 2.47, 2.3, and like 0.2 CFM. Not much on this little guy. But you have a choke point right there. So you can't stuff 10 plus CFM into that valve stem. And they accept about 1.8 to 2 CFM through the valve stem and the valve core at one time, right? So these compressors at 2-ish, 2.5 CFM, filling up one tire at a time is perfect. These ones at 5.65, optimally, you're going to want to fill up 2 tires at the same time. You can do one at a time, that's not a problem, but you're not optimizing the airflow that these are putting out. And this Morflate one with the dual cylinders, this is meant to fill up 4 tires at the same time. So we're going to be seeing how quickly they will fill up each tire, and I'm going to be testing how loud each of them are with this dB meter, and then we're going to be using our thermometer to check our heat at all the different points to see, that's going to kind of check the longevity of how long I think these parts are going to last. With that being said, let's get right into the testing. For this test, I'm going to be using my 39 1350 17 BFG all-terrains. We're going to air these down, all of them, to 6 psi, and we're going to attempt to bring all 4 of the tires with each compressor from 6 psi up to 32 psi. That is going to be the test for every single compressor. I'm going to leave it the same across all of them and see how well they perform. First up is the cheapest one. This is a Neekmere. I don't know what that means, but it was $32.90 on Amazon. It is very cheap, it's very light, lots of plastic. One good thing that I like about this is this wire is 16 feet long. So because the gauge is on the compressor itself, it's nice not using this hose, and I can move the compressor to each tire and hook it up with this and then set the pressure and have the gauge at the tire, not have to walk from the tire back to the front of the truck. Let's go ahead and hook this up to the truck and see if we can test it out. Let's see, we got 0 psi, 35, we want 32. Started out pretty good for this compressor, but as time went on, it just didn't hold up. It had a maximum of 83.4 decibel and 120.9 temperature on the compressor itself. But after 15 minutes, the compressor kept shutting off, and it would not air the tire up past 28 psi. It just would not do it. So I called the test at that point. We're moving on to the next one. So next up, surprisingly in cost, is this 150 psi, much larger compressor, and this one is $52, and it seems to be fairly well made. There's a lot of metal here, it's heavy, so it doesn't have a cigarette lighter adapter, which is fine. In my case, I don't really want it for a bigger compressor like this. The cable is about 7 feet long, and the hose right here, we have our attachment to attach to our valve stem. We have our pressure gauge right here and our pressure release right here. And it goes from 0 to 150 psi. Now this hose is plenty long to reach the back of my truck on both sides with plenty of room. I have no issue with the amount of hose. Let's go hook this all up and we will give this one a test. So I'm setting up this next one. I just want to say this hose just makes my hands feel super gross, and it's like leaving chunks on my hand, so I decided to wipe it off. And look at this. I don't know what's on this hose, but it is absolutely disgusting. At first I thought it was like an oil or a coating or something like that, but it definitely does not feel or look like oil or coating. I really do not know what that is. So that's pretty gross, and I'm gonna clean this hose all the way off before I go and touch it again, and then we can keep going on the test. Not surprisingly, this compressor had no issues filling up these 39-inch tires with an average of 3 minutes and 30 seconds per tire filling them up. It was one of the hottest at 212 degrees and was actually surprisingly loud at 91.2 decibels. So this next one is a GSPSCN, and it's another one of these little tiny guys with the gauge built into it. This one is just a regular gauge. It doesn't have a digital gauge, and it doesn't automatically pump up to a pressure and then shut off like that other one. In this one, I paid $49.99, and the clamps on here leave a lot to be desired. They are all metal, but they are very cheap, and it has an adapter, and they are basically the adapter, come on, for the cigarette lighter. So you can use this as a cigarette lighter, and overall it is definitely heavier than the other one, and it seems to have a lot more metal in it, even though this is all plastic as well. This hose feels a lot more rubbery and not super hard like the other one. And so, I mean, overall it's cheap and small, and I don't have high hopes for it, but let's go ahead and hook it up to the truck and see if we can fill up these 39s. This compressor averaged 9 minutes and 35 seconds per tire, filling from 6 psi to 32 psi. It ran at 83.7 decibels, and the hottest it got was 178.8. Next up is this Smittybilt compressor. You can see it has a lot of similarities to the second one that we tested that was only $50, and I can say that is almost identical in every way, but we'll talk more about that at the end of the video. This one is $163.19, and it is well made. I like it. I have had this one for probably 7 years, and I used it on my Jeep filling up 40s, and like, it takes a little while, but it works, and it's reasonably priced. The only issue that I have, or that I had with this one, is these hoses leave a lot to be desired. And you can see the actual gauge itself right here. It's actually off of it. I had to take it out. It went right here. Probably like the second or third time I used this, it was in the snow, and it was like 30 degrees outside. This junction block, this aluminum block that has the gauge on it, it actually froze up and would not allow any air to get past it. So on the side of the trail, or the road, I had to take it out in order to actually fill up my tires. And you can see I never actually fixed it. So I was still using this hose, but I had to use a separate gauge, and I had to just take it off every time to check the pressure to make sure that I was at the right PSI. But either way, this one being basically identical to the other one, except like 3 times the cost, I'm curious to see how this one compares to the other one. And because this one does not have a gauge, they are interchangeable, so I'm using the air hose kit from the other one so that they are actually equal. So let's go ahead and hook this up and we'll test it out. Now the Smittybilt had no issues airing up these 39s. It filled them up in 3 minutes and 31 seconds on the average, and it was 83.1 decibel, and it ran about 123 degrees on the cylinder head. Now on our more high-end, more expensive one, we have this Morflate 10.6 compressor. It's very similar to the Smittybilt, except you just take one of these cylinders off or add one here. So we got double the capacity, or about double the capacity because we have the 2 cylinders here. Now this compressor is $230 for this one. This one has 2 advantages. It has a much higher quality hose with fittings that actually fit any air chuck. It's just a regular old air chuck fitting. The main thing on this one, it has a pressure switch built into it. So you don't have to shut the compressor off when you're using it. When you block the air off with this to check your pressure, it will just automatically shut the compressor off on its own. The next thing here, this hose kit is a 4-tire hose kit. I can fill up all 4 of my tires at the same time. It is $205. This whole package right here would cost you $435. So let's hook this up and compare it to all the other compressors. The Morflate compressor ended up filling up all 4 tires in 7 minutes and 10 seconds at 93.8 decibels, and the hottest it got was 162.3 degrees. So now if you remember at the beginning of the video, I talked about how you can't literally push 5.65 CFM into one tire at one time. So you're restricting that airflow at the valve core itself to 1.8 to 2 CFM. So this compressor at 5.65 is better utilized at airing up 2 tires at the same time. So what I did with this one is I really quickly just attached a shop hose to it with a regular old fitting on it and attached it to my Morflate hose, and I used 2 tires of the 4 and filled up 2 tires at a time. So let's go ahead and test that out and see if it makes a difference. With this compressor filling up 2 tires at the same time, it was 5 minutes and 30 seconds for 2 tires. So if we're comparing these two, we're talking 11 minutes to fill up all 4 tires 2 at a time versus about 14 minutes filling them up 1 tire at a time. Now, as a little bit of a bonus, I decided to buy one of these little Harbor Freight Bauer battery-powered air fill-up tool. This tool by itself is $24.99. I already had batteries, which is why I decided to just buy it at $24.99. I already had 2 batteries because I have a grinder and I have a blower and I have a few other tools that I've been collecting with the Bauer batteries. And I decided to try it out. And I threw this in the back of the truck on my Idaho trip, and I ended up using it a lot. I used it to fill up the airbags on the back of my truck when I was towing. I added about 5 psi to these 39s at a gas station. This is perfect for adding a little, a couple psi to a tire on any tire. I used it on my trailer. My trailer sat for about a year, so all 4 of the tires were about 3 or 4 psi low. So it didn't take too long to fill 3 or 4 psi into all 4 of those tires, then into the airbag of my truck. I didn't have to get a compressor out, hook it up to a battery, or do anything like that. It was super simple, super easy. Now, like I said, you're not going to fill up a 39 or a regular tire. You're not going to fill up a tire with this. But this is a perfect thing that I throw in the back of the truck. Doesn't really take up much space. I already have the batteries, and is just super, super convenient and useful. So guys, when it comes down to it, these smaller compressors right here, while this one did fill up the 39, it took way too long. Not going to be useful on the trail as far as an off-road tire air compressor. These are going to go into my personal, daily drivers, me and the wife's. This air compressor right here for 50 bucks, I went back onto Amazon to try and find it so I could screenshot it. It wasn't there at all anymore. I was able to find it under a different brand in a different ad, the exact same one for I think $75 or $79. And that just tells me that if this breaks or you have an issue with it, like, you're not getting any kind of service. You buy it for 50 bucks. If it stops working, you throw it away. I mean, it is what it is, right? So this is the exact same one. You're gonna look, if you Google off-road air compressor, you're gonna see ones that look exactly like this. You're gonna see hundreds of them, and they're all between $130 and $160. So if you're gonna spend that money, I would get something from a brand that you know is going to be sticking around, right? So Smittybilt, I've had this one for about 7 years. Still works fine. This Morflate, I've used it for about 1.5 years. Still works fine. Company's still around, making innovative new products. Still coming out with new products. So I don't have any issues with this one right here. So I really wanted this guy right here, 50 bucks, to be the one, right? I really wanted to, but considering it had the same output as these two were exactly the same. They filled up the tire exactly the same amount of time, but this one ran hotter, it was louder, and then one thing I'll throw on the screen right now, the noise that this thing made, it snaps through the air hose. It's hard to describe, kind of like the crackling of a power line. So I think the quality control of this is not there. It kind of sounds like piston slap going through the air hose. So when it comes down to it, what would I buy? What would I spend my money on if I was going to try to go budget? I would get the Morflate single cylinder version. It's $160, so it's comparable to the Smittybilt. And then I would get a 2-tire hose kit. It's $160, I think, so $315 for the compressor and the hose kit. You can fill up 2 tires at the same time. Real quick, I need to jump in. As I was editing this, I saw this Morflate 5.6 PSI Pro compressor on sale for $199. This is a screaming deal, guys, and if I didn't already have one, I would be buying one of these right now. This one actually has the gauge built into the compressor, and you set whatever PSI you want, and the compressor does everything for you. Well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a lot more work on this S10. I have a ton of stuff that I still need to do to it. We're going to get back in the shop, get fabricating, get building on this. So until next time, we will see you back here in the garage.